So today we're reviewing for Standard 2. The first concept is adding and subtracting negative numbers. If you are adding two numbers that have the same sign, such as a positive and a positive, they of course stay positive. However, if you are adding, or in this case subtracting two numbers with the same sign, they all stay negative and bring things further negative. The common mistake here is people see two negatives and they think it makes a positive. That is the case for multiplication, but not when you are subtracting. It brings it further negative. So when we have multiple numbers that we are adding, subtracting, we don't follow the conventional wisdom, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and think, hey, addition happens first, so I should take 4 plus 3 before I do anything. That's actually wrong, because addition and subtraction happen at the same time. So we go left to right. In this problem, we would take 2 minus 4, and then we would add 3. So if we start here with a positive 2, and we subtract 4, that means we are moving on the number line 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. Because when you subtract, you move to the left. And from there, we're going to move 3 to the right. Our final destination is here at a positive 1. The other thing to watch out for is when we have 3 minus a negative 4. Here, when we have two negatives right next to each other, they cancel each other out and it becomes plus. So this, like 3 minus a negative 4, would actually be 3 plus 4, which is just 7. So one more practice. Here if we start with a positive 2, we're beginning here on the number line at 2. And when we minus 5, that means we are moving left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, which brings us to a negative 3 actually. Then when we add 4, that means we are moving to the right 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we are at a positive 1. And lastly, we're going to subtract 3. So from this point, we'll go left 1, 2, 3. And this brings us to a negative 2 as our final answer. This is a surefire way to remember how to add and subtract negative numbers. So next up, how about when we multiply and divide positive and negative numbers? The rules are different. The first concept is, when you're multiplying two numbers with the same sign, such as a positive 7 and a positive 3, your answer comes out positive. Also, when you are multiplying two negative numbers that have the same sign, such as negative 3 and negative 2, your answer still comes out positive. So the general rule is, when you are multiplying two numbers with the same sign, your answer always comes out positive. The same thing, or the opposite is true if your signs are different, such as a positive 3 times a negative 2. Then your answer is always going to come out negative. So negative 4 times 6, different sign, it's going to come out negative. So what about a multi-step problem when you are multiplying and dividing several numbers? Well, we're going to treat this from left to right, two numbers at a time. So let's begin with the first two numbers, 7 times a negative 2. These two numbers have a different sign, so our answer is going to come out negative. Then we will pull down this division of 7, and we'll look at our next two numbers. We are dividing a negative by a positive. They have a different sign, so the answer is going to come out negative. And your final answer will be negative 2. The tricky part comes when we have fractions. If you see a fraction like this, 2 times 4 divided by 3, there are actually invisible parentheses on the top of the fraction bar. And that tells you that you should multiply before you divide. So in this case, we would take 2 times 4 is equal to 8, and then our answer would be 8/3. The final concept to review for today is absolute value. The definition of absolute value is distance from 0. So if I take the absolute value of a number like 3, how far away is that from 0? 1, 2, 3. If I take the absolute value of a different number, like negative 2, how far away is that from 0? 1, 2. Or in a more practical sense, you might think of the absolute value as always coming out positive. It turns positive numbers positive, and it turns negative numbers positive also. So if I tell you that the absolute value of negative 7 is 7, and the absolute value of 7 is also 7, what about if I ask the question, what number is given an absolute value of 7? There are two solutions, a positive 7 and a negative 7. And we can see from above, both of those come out as a positive 7. A bit of a trick question is if I ask you, what numbers give an absolute value of negative 3? If I try the absolute value of 3, that comes out positive. If I try the absolute value of negative 3, that also comes out positive. So there are no such numbers. You could call it undefined, or you could call it impossible, or none. When we have the absolute value brackets in the context of a larger problem, we follow the typical order of operations. And absolute value brackets function like parentheses, meaning that we do those first. So in a problem like this, we would first take 2 minus 5 to get negative 3. The next thing we would do is resolve the absolute value. So the absolute value of negative 3 turns out to be a positive 3. But notice that negative from outside of the bracket remains, because that is actually a negative 1 being multiplied by whatever the absolute value turns out to be. So in this case, we end up with negative 3 plus 7. And if we think about a number line, we're starting negative and heading to the right. So our final answer is going to be a positive 4.